All right, so let's dive into something pretty big happening right now. In the U.S., I mean, birthright citizenship, that's ending.
Hmm.
You know, that whole thing where if you're born on U.S. soil, boom, automatic citizen. Doesn't matter your parents' situation.
Right.
Been a core idea for, what, over 150 years?
Mm.
Tied right into the 14th Amendment? But, look, February 19th, 2025, things are changing.
Big time.
We've got, like, a whole stack of stuff here. The executive order itself, analyses from legal folks breaking it down, projections of who this is going to hit. Our deep dive today, we're going to, well, try to make sense of it all.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, how much this actually shifts things. I mean, for a long time, being born in the U.S., that was American citizenship.
Yes, the definition.
And now the rules of the game are changing.
Yeah.
And the implications of that, huge.
Absolutely huge. So, implications. Let's get into them. What exactly are changing because of this executive order?
Okay, so the core change, the big one, it's this. Kids born in the U.S., but their parents. If the parents aren't citizens or green card holders, then those kids, they don't automatically become citizens themselves anymore.
So we're talking about, like, children of undocumented immigrants.
Right.
That's the main group.
Yeah, they're definitely affected. But it's actually broader than that. It includes kids born to people who are here legally, but on temporary visas,
Oh,
Like, think about H-1B visas.
highly skilled workers, yeah.
Exactly, like in tech, medicine, all that. Or even students on F-1 visas. Their kids, no more automatic citizenship at birth.
Wow, okay. So to, like, paint a picture of the difference, imagine you've got a software engineer, comes from India, say, on an H-1B. They have a baby here. Old rules, that baby, boom, U.S. citizen, no problem.
Right.
But starting next month.
Well, that child, they'd inherit their parents' visa situation.
So H-4 visa, probably.
Most likely, yeah. Meaning their whole right to be in the U.S., it's completely tied to the parents.
So, like, if the visa expires, if the parent loses their job, any of those things that happen in life, what happens to the kid then?
Exactly, yeah. Their whole future, it gets really uncertain. I mean, it raises so many questions about stability, What options will they even have?
Right.
And then, of course, there's the even more complicated situation, the kids born to undocumented parents.
Right. Because they weren't ever on a visa to begin with. So no automatic citizenship there for the kids. And, I mean, those families, they were already facing an uphill battle, right?
Absolutely. And now, yeah, it gets even tougher. This is where we get into the concept of statelessness, meaning these kids, they're not recognized as citizens by NRY country.
Wow.
Think about the impact on a child's life, Their access to education, healthcare, even just their sense of belonging, where they fit in.
That's a lot to process. So, okay, birthright citizenship is ending. That's the big thing. But what actually happens in NXT for these families? Like, what are their options, practically speaking?
So for those folks on temporary visas, they're going to need to apply for dependent visas for their newborns, and they got to do it right away.
Oh, wow. Immediately.
Yeah, so that means dealing with a whole bureaucratic system, proving their own legal status, making sure they meet every requirement. And even then, there's just a lot of unknowns.
You're talking lots of paperwork, deadlines, all that. Potential for stuff to get messed up, right?
Yeah.
I imagine that's just an extra layer of stress on top of everything else.
Absolutely, yeah. And it goes even further than that. These kids, even though they were born here, they might run into barriers for stuff we just take for granted, Things like going to public schools, getting in-state tuition for college, or even qualifying for some healthcare programs.
Hold on, so a kid born here, they could be denied access to public school just because their parents are on a visa. That's hard to even imagine.
Yeah, I know. But it really shows how wide-reaching this policy change is, The ripple effects. And the challenges don't stop there. When these kids turn 21, they age out of that dependent visa status.
Meaning, legally, they're adults now and not covered by the parents' visa anymore.
Exactly. And if by then they haven't managed to get another visa, like a student one or a work one, they could be forced to leave the only country they've ever known as home.
Oh, man. That's tough. And for the families who are undocumented already, it sounds like this just makes a difficult situation even worse.
It does, unfortunately. I mean, these families, they were already navigating a system where options were limited. Now, without birthright citizenship for the kids, that path to legal status, it just feels even more out of reach. And it's important, I think, to really acknowledge that human impact. This is about families, it's about kids, it's about lives that are going to be shaped by this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the laws and the politics and all that. But at the end of the day, this is about real people dealing with real consequences.
Yeah.
So beyond the practical challenges, like what about the legal and social fallout? This whole thing just feels so controversial.
Oh, it is. A lot of legal experts, they're saying this executive order, it goes directly against what the 14th Amendment was supposed to do. Like, the ACLU, they've been really outspoken. They say this basically undermines, decades of progress on civil rights.
So is it even constitutional? That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like we're headed for a huge legal battle over there.
Yeah, it's hard to see how we avoid that. The courts, they're going to have to step in. They'll need to decide if this whole new way of looking at the 14th Amendment, if it actually holds up, you know,
right.
and the outcome of that. I mean, that affects everyone involved.
What's interesting to me is the message this sends. The U.S., it's always been this place, land of opportunity, come here, build a better life, all that. Does this change that?
Yeah.
Like if I'm some super talented engineer in India, am I now less likely to come to the U.S. if I know my kids won't automatically be citizens?
It's a question a lot of people are asking. Will it discourage people? Will it impact industries that need these temporary workers? Like the tech sector, they rely on global talent. These are real concerns.
Absolutely. Think about Silicon Valley right now.
Right.
So much of what they do, it comes from immigrants. Are we shooting ourselves in the foot here, hurting our own economy because of this?
It's complicated. I mean, the economic impacts, they could go way beyond just one industry, right? And it's not just the big picture either. This could trickle down to local communities, job markets, schools, even healthcare systems.
So let's bring it back to our listener for a sec. Why should they care about this? Even if they're not personally affected by these changes, why does it matter?
Because this is about who we are as a country. It's about our values, our commitment to equality, to opportunity. The outcome of all this, it's going to have ripple effects on everyone. It'll shape American society for generations.
That's a big thought, man. It makes it clear why it's so important to stay informed, right? To really understand what's going on and have conversations about it.
Definitely. Knowledge is power, right? And in this situation, knowing what's going on, it can help us push for solutions that are fair. That's what we need for everyone involved.
Well said. So where do we go from here? What are some potential outcomes we should be looking out for? What should our listener be paying attention to?
Well, honestly, the future's still up in the air. Legal battles, they're just getting started. The courts could uphold this order, they could change it, they could even throw the whole thing out.
So we're kind of in wait-and-see mode right now.
Kinda, yeah. But that doesn't mean we should just sit around doing nothing, It's super important that people stay informed, follow what's happening in the courts, and talk to their elected officials.
Oh, so this is a call to action for our listeners. Don't just, hear this and forget it. Get involved.
Exactly. This is a big moment in our history, and the choices we make now, they're going to have a lasting impact. We all have a role to play in deciding what the future looks like.
We've covered, what's changing, why it's a big deal, but what about the, okay, now what part? What can our listener actually deal with all this info?
That's the key question, right? I mean, first things first, stay informed. Things are moving fast.
Yeah.
And these court cases, they could flip the whole script.
Totally. So don't just tune us out after this. Keep up with what's happening, the legal stuff, news coverage, groups fighting for change on this issue.
Exactly, yeah. And don't forget, your voice matters.
Right.
Reach out to your representatives, tell them what you think. You support this, you oppose it, whatever it is, let them know. Make it part of the process.
I like that. It's easy to feel like, what can I even do? But contacting your reps, that's a real step anyone can take.
It is. It is. And if all this feels overwhelming, where do I even start? Remember, you're not alone.
Yeah.
There are organizations out there specifically to help families deal with all this. Legal advice, resources, support, you name it. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Sometimes just knowing who to turn to, that's half the battle.
Absolutely. And hey, at the end of the day, let's not forget the human side of this.
Right.
These changes, they're impacting real people, families, kids. Empathy, understanding, that's got to be part of this.
Couldn't agree more. Easy to get lost in the big arguments, but these are real lives.
Exactly. So let's talk to each other. Really listen to different sides. Try to find solutions that are, humane, that are fair. This is about more than just the law. It's about being human.
That's a good way to put it. So for our listener, we've covered a lot of ground here. Birthright citizenship, it's ending. Huge impact. Future's uncertain. But knowing what we know now and being willing to do something about it, that's how we can shape what happens next. Thanks for helping us break it all down.
It's been my pleasure, really. And listener, remember, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged. Your voice matters.